as we transition to the amazing Yolanda. I was going to share my screen again, but I think we'll just keep flowing for time's sake. So, Yolanda, Yolanda Hall, you're an amazing human being who just do so much for others professionally and personally. And I've attended quite a few of your events, and they are phenomenal, like the phenomenal woman that you are. You know that I love you dearly. And I love how, although you have specific ongoing ventures that you've established, you're still always so open to trying new things and collaborating with others. And so before I get into the questions that I'd like to ask, excuse me, I just want to share a bit about how we met, as well as a specific experience I had with you, which just left my heart just reverberating. You know that pink emoji that has like the ripple effect, the reverberation? Yeah, that's how I feel. So Latoya, who just spoke, she thought it would be beneficial for me to meet your husband, who again is such a wonderful man. And after speaking with him, he thought that all three of us should have a meeting. And you guys invited me to an event that he was presenting at I think it was that same weekend actually. And I drove all the way out to Charlottesville. I didn't even meet you guys in person, right? Just after one conversation, drove all the way out to Charlottesville to support you both. And who would have known that we would have connected immediately the way that we did? And since then, I don't think I missed one of your events. I think I missed one when I was in South Africa last year. But nonetheless, the point that I want to make is that we didn't collaborate initially as we envisioned. However, last year, I think it was at the end of February, I came across a grant that was due perhaps 2 to 3 days after I encountered this grant. And in sharing with you, you immediately said, let's apply for it together as partners for the summer camp that I wanted to do. And while still doing your work for your other jobs, right? You took every bit of unaccounted for time to meet with me via Zoom so that we can complete that application together. And in April, which we didn't even know that our birthdays are two days apart, right? You called me and you said, sis, are you sitting? And the rest is history, right? Like you just said, we got the grant and we were able to collaborate on a summer program that I had been working for a while. And, you know, we were able to make such great impact together. So I just want to publicly say thank you for that. And just to share how we met, right? Through Yolanda, who I met in another state, who connected your husband with me and then me with you. And now we're all sisters together. Like we can't make that up ourselves. Like God is just so good. So welcome, welcome, welcome. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. So you see, I have my tissue in my hand, right? I was like, if she say another thing. But yes, everything that Aisha said is absolutely true. And my sentiments are the same. She is so passionate about everything that she does. And not about me, not selfish about me, but she has such belief in the vision of Unbreakable Minds that I felt like I went to an event and I invited her and I said, Aisha, I need somebody to come with me because there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of networking. And I think that aside from my husband, you are one person that I could walk off and I know that you got it. Even if you don't know everything about what we've been doing for over the years, she just really believed in the vision, right? And so it's so hard, you know, being an entrepreneur is very lonely sometimes. I know many of you know that, especially if you don't have a team and you're building your business. And so when you find people who are genuinely good people, and we had the New York thing in common, and the educator thing in common, and so it just clicked. Like we knew immediately that that was God. And like you said, you traveled all the way to Charlottesville, for an event with him, for us to have that conversation, to be connected, and to be able to take the baton and go from there. So I also am grateful for Latoya. She helped us as well in my program when we were celebrating our kings and queens. And she was like, girl, I got you. She got the crowns and she got some gifts for them. And just has been an amazing person, collaborated with Curtis on some things. And Alicia, I met her through like, I don't know if you say accountability group, but kind of an empowerment group for female entrepreneurs. And she and I became accountability partners. And as busy as we were, like Facebook Messenger was it, because if it was 1 o'clock in the morning, we knew we wouldn't disturb anybody, but we could send a message back and forth just to try to stay as accountable as we could. So yes, women, we need each other. And you are correct. We do need the men. And we have to invite them in, because sometimes we can be a little intimidating, especially us strong, alpha women. So I'm going to stop there. But thank you so much, Aisha, for thinking of me. And as busy as I was, and I looked at the calendar and I said, yes, we're going to make it work. Put me at the end of the month. So here we are.
I am not going to say another thing because you have me crying. I'm going to jump straight to the questions. So yes, Yolanda, what inspired you to launch Unbreakable Minds Coaching in addition to school counseling, and how did taking that step align with your purpose?
Yes. So I think about, maybe 10-ish years ago, every time you hit the 30 or the 40 or the 50, you feel like something big is supposed to happen. Like if I haven't changed in the past 9 years, now is the time. And I think I started to realize that um the jobs that God had blessed me with over the years, that they were to build my resume for something that was bigger, something that he had for me, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I'm just like, okay, God, I'm constantly like, what am I supposed to be doing? Just trying to be in alignment. And in the fall of 2020, I was invited to be part of a group coaching program, and whatever it was about. But in 8 weeks, with 9 other people in the group, I like became crystal clear. Like all the fog was gone. I was like, I know exactly what I want to do, and this coaching, this experience right here, this is it. This is what I want to provide for young people. There are so many things that we do it as adults, from networking to, go finding our own mentors, to all these things that young people don't get exposed to until they are grown. And so, I want to take those opportunities to um, let young people know how important it is, how important connection, and like you all said, the community and the village, right? How important they are. COVID had us jacked up, and a lot of people went into their shell, they went into their room, and that was it for 2 years. And I started getting phone calls from people who knew me as a school counselor, and they were saying, Yolanda, I don't know what to do. My kid was an all A student. They were, excelling in everything, and now I just can't reach them. And so somebody told me that if somebody constantly calls you and asks you for something, then you should start a business doing that thing. Because clearly you have the authenticity, the ability to connect and to transform and all those different things. And so between the experience of the group coaching program, between the phone starting to ring, between the fact that I had so much time on my hands, I was like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna step out on faith. And so in between there, what we didn't mention is that from leaving school counseling, I currently work as a mental health professional, but in prevention. So I still work with young people, increasing protective factors and decreasing risk factors of them turning to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, opioids, over-the-counter medication, suicide prevention, violence prevention, all the things. So all these things stirred up in a cup. I was like, I need to be able to serve outside of this box that all these people have me in. They tell me I only have 15 minutes to meet with the child. They tell me that, I can't say certain things. If someone comes in, we can't have, there's a separation between church and state. And I have, and I would close my door and we would just do what needed to be done, right? I would connect however the connection was happening. And so that's how that transition happened. And I heard a quote by Sheryl Sandberg, who I don't know if she still is the COO of Facebook. And she said that, and I pulled it up so I could say it right. Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that that impact lasts in your absence. When I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I have work to do and I have to do it so powerfully that when I leave, that that impact still continues to happen. And so I think I answered your question, but all of that, my presence I feel is my superpower. And that is what God has given me as my purpose to connect with young people, parents, community partners, like everybody. And so I never took that lightly. Once I heard that quote, that's something I always live by. I want my impact to last in my absence. And so I try to show up 100%. And I think that is what allows me to help young people as well as parents experience the transformation they're looking for.
Wow, and that is true
A
indeed.
lot.
You do show up as yourself, and everything you do is done with intentionality. And you often talk about being intentional, right? Uh, in your casual conversations as well as in your coaching and other programs. It's even in your name, parenting on purpose, right? So, can you tell us how you've leveraged the relationship or the relationships that you have within your network to curate the career that you have now?
So I realized early on that my experiences were more meaningful when they happened because of a connection, right? And so um, from high school, the reason I became a school counselor was because my school counselor was amazing, but she was a connector of people. And it was always like, well, if you have a question, we're going to call somebody. I'm going to connect you to this person. I'm going to connect you to that person. And so I have been able to leverage relationships since my high school years. I mean, I'll tell y'all this real quick. When I was in New York in high school, my counselor recommended me for a position at the United States Attorney's Office. So as a junior in high school, I'm working for the federal government, right? And as I was graduating, coming to Virginia to go to school, I said to her, I'm going to the capital of Virginia. Do you think, is there a U.S. Attorney's office there? Like, do you think I could get like a little transfer? Like, can you hook me up with a job? And she did. And it was a lot to say about her, it was a lot to say about me because she was putting her everything on the line, calling Virginia saying, I have this young woman that's coming to college. Can you give her a job? And they gave me a job. And from then, every single time I needed to make a transition in my life, I looked to see who was already 2, 3 steps ahead of me in that place. And I reached out to them. They used to say that there was, what, 6 degrees of separation. But I have learned in my life, there has been maybe one or two. Because anybody that I have wanted to meet, either I was put in a space where they were, or I talked enough and made enough calls to be able to find someone that knew them. Every single job I've had in my adult life, y'all, has been a job that I've gotten through a connection. And it's a job that I vetted. It's like they're interviewing me. No, I'm interviewing you. I'm finding out everything I need to find out before I get there because I am very intentional about the moves that I make. And even this is the last thing I'll say about this. So I'm very intentional about the spaces that I enter, but I'm also um, have the discernment when people invite me to spaces because I feel like that's when God is moving, right? A lot of times us alpha females, we want to take control and we're like, oh, I want to make this decision, I want to do that, but ultimately God is in charge, and we trying to figure it out and he long time ago already worked it out. So, so I'm like, when somebody invites me to a space, that's the time when I don't have enough connections. I don't know the person that he needs to connect me with. And so then I give him my yes and I go. And just like with you and I, Alicia, I mean, Aisha and Alicia and Latoya, like all of us, those connections have been so valuable, so yeah, just I have leveraged relationships have been everything to me. And so that's why I try to show up 100%. And somebody told me to keep my name on the tip of people's tongues. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, whatever it is that you do it to the best of your ability, but be the person that when they're like, oh, I need this. Who can I call? Who can I call? That my name is on the tip of their tongue, and that they know that I'm gonna represent their decision to refer, to me, when they call. I'm gonna be the person that they said I was. And so yeah, relationships have been everything and have gotten me to this space. So I'm an only child, but I know that I cannot do it alone. Anything.
Well, and it's funny you said that because that's literally what happened last year when I spoke with my professor and I had mentioned about the grant. He said, well, reach out to someone in your community who can, help you find someone to apply for the grant. And I reached out to you to help me find someone, but it turned out that you just said, let's do it. I'll do it for you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So, oh, wow. So yes, you practice what you preach for sure. And so you've spent over 20 years guiding young minds. What strategies have you found to be the most effective in helping teens and young adults kind of like get out of their own way, so to speak, and live with purpose?
Yes. So I talked earlier about when I said my presence is my superpower. My husband told me that. I don't even think I knew that, but he said to me, he's like, he walks behind me, and he's like, I see how people are when you're in the room or you're in the space. He always like stands back and kind of watch that. So I don't take that lightly either, you know, that when I show up, that presence is going to the energy that I bring is going to impact someone. Building the relationships and building those communities, I think it allows me to build trust, right? So we pull in the whole family, right? And so getting that trust, and I know one time I had a client and the parents met with me, but I don't know how much they told the child. And I when I told the child how I knew their mom, they were like, "Oh, the parent didn't even tell them all that." But I had to let them know, like, I'm already in the village, and I said some things, and I knew you when you were in the choir at the church, and they were just like, "Oh my goodness," and so that kind of broke all the ice, removed all the barriers, and we were able to do some good work. But I connect with young people in ways that help them feel seen, heard, and understood. And I think that's very important in someone who is trying to experience a transformation is a lot of times in their spaces, they oftentimes don't feel seen, heard, or understood. Maybe there's 4 or 5 other kids in the house, maybe, just a blended family, like all these things go on, at home. And so I like to create that space doing little things like pronouncing their name. And I know you're probably not expecting this. You're thinking like some strategy or some theory or something that I use, but it really is about creating the environment, right? The safe space. And so knowing their names, pronouncing their names correctly, genuinely being excited when I see them. If we're on Zoom, when they pop on, I'm like, like, oh my gosh, like you were the person I've been waiting for all day to see and talk to. And so that makes a difference when we're in person, the side hugs and all those things and being interested in what they're interested in. The parents come to me and they say, I want you to work with my child on this. But when the child shows up, sometimes what they want to work on is different, but they don't have the voice to be able to share that or, the courage and the voice to be able to say to their parent, but this is what I really want. And so I make sure that they are a part of the process. Coaching is about, like we're driving in a car, you're at the steering wheel as a client. I am in the passenger seat, sometimes in the back, and I just want to be able to, I know where the curves are coming. I know where the cliff is coming. And so I'm just helping you avoid that. But you're driving, and reminding them of their personal power. So, those kinds of things are what allows them to um, get out of their own way, right? Also mindset. So I've coined myself as a mindset coach. And that's because as I started coaching, I realized that as I'm talking, we're talking about, whatever the issue is, it's their mindset. I'm like, this person really believes that they can't do this, right? Some experience in their life has made them believe that this is the only option. And so just helping them to be able to see that they can't because they believe they can't. And if they believe they can, then they can, right? And I know that there's resources and there's all these things, but if your goal is realistic for you, then you can achieve it. You can achieve it, but you have to believe that. And I know you hear, you believe it, you can achieve it, it's true. There's a quote, I think it's Henry Ford. He says, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. Whatever the belief is. And so these are some ways that I help them get out of their way by just shifting their mindset. And sometimes it's just one word in the sentence. I was giving some young people an example the other day, and I said, my grandmother's 91, and I have friends who don't have parents, let alone have grandparents. And, my grandmother comes to my house and it shifts everything, it changes everything. But I could say, hell, I have to keep my grandmother this weekend. Or I could say, I get to keep my grandmother this weekend. You know what I mean? And it just changes. Oh, you see people go, oh, like, wow, yeah. And so the way I think about it determines how I show up. And so I help them understand that. And then the last thing I'll say is that language matters, right? Um, Proverbs 18, somewhere in there, it says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, right? And so the words that we say to ourselves about ourselves, they matter, right? We need to speak to ourselves like we speak to our best friend. And a lot of times we're our biggest critic. And, our brain is always listening. So, and it believes what you tell it. And so whatever you say out loud, whatever you think really hard on, wherever your mind goes, that's what's going to happen. So I just help them understand, if they can shift those couple of things, then they can live their best life with purpose on purpose.
Oh my goodness. I love everything that you shared. You talked about a mindset and your belief system, right? And that has to do with faith. Again, substance of things so forth, and the evidence, just being able to visualize it in the spirit because it already exists in the spirit. And
Yeah.
I also love what you talked about in terms of making sure that the young people are seen, which we often do, right? That they're heard. We often do, but that understanding piece. Again, the word says, in all thy getting good understanding, and that can be applied to even the relationships that we have with others, especially our young people. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so to wrap up the conversation, we all know now, if you didn't know, now you know that Yolanda does quite a lot. And we know that
We go on and on, right?
right, exactly, your scope of work supports others in mind and well-being, which you talked about, right? Which means that taking care of oneself is important to you. So how do you, and I'm using the word balance again, but we know align or synchronize, right? Everything in your life, being a wife, mom of two teens, because you have two teenagers, right?
That part.
An
Girls.
entrepreneur, a community leader while staying grounded in your mission.
So, number one, I'm so grateful to God that I get to do what fills my tank, right? There's times that I go to these programs to work with these young people and just you serving organizations, even the adults, and I'm dog tired, right? I'm dragging myself there. I'm like, oh my goodness, what, what in the world? Like, how am I going to show up? But then I get there and I immediately feel the energy coming because I know what's about to happen in the room. So doing what I love, and that's why I choose to do this in addition to the job, right? Because when the job doesn't give me the fulfillment that I need, like it's giving me the insurance, it's giving me, the financials and the different benefits, but this fills my tank. And so that's what makes it so easy for me to show up and do that. You were talking about balance and you were saying different words, like sometimes it's not balance. And my husband and I have said, we will use the word harmony. And like, just long as they work together. And like Alicia was saying, given the quote from Mrs. Obama, it's not always going to be 50-50, that I can give, equal energy and attention to everything at one time. But as long as they work together, sometimes it's going to be, 70% in family and I'm just the job, I'm like, this is all I got right now. Or, vice versa, or the business is has big things going on right now. So definitely finding harmony. And I get my whole family involved in what we do. My husband is also a life coach and he works with young men and now moving into the fatherhood space. And so because we work with young people who we have, right? We work with parents who we work with families who we are. That journey is easier because we're we're living out what we're helping. We're just two steps ahead of all the people that we're trying to help. Like we all are still on our journey. We have not figured it out. And then I recognize that, my children are always watching. They're always watching. And they don't pay as much attention to what you say, but they are watching what you do. And you hope that they see, all the qualities that it takes to do this work. So that helps me stay in harmony, just knowing that they're watching and having them along on the journey. And then that my husband is in, I get to share the same space with him. We have meetings at our kitchen table and we have deep, deep conversations because, I'm like mental health first aid trainer and I train in childhood trauma. And so because we have those conversations, it is a mindset shift and it's changed the lens through which we see the world. We watch TV different. We show up differently as parents. We deal with our parents differently because Lord knows, you know what I'm saying? They have their opinions on how it's supposed to be done. But just being able to do all those things. And the last thing is just putting aside that me time. And we do something called momcations and dadcations, where we take 1 or 2 days. If we have a conference, we may stay an extra day or two. If we have some points on our timeshare or our vacation property, it's like, okay, just go take 2 days and go to Williamsburg, kind of thing. And I know that's not something everybody can do, but even if you went to a girlfriend's house and just stayed on her couch for 2 days or in her spare room, sometimes you just have to detach yourself guilt-free because we need our tanks to be overflowing, not just full, because we're constantly giving as women and mothers. And so, yeah, that's how I balance it all.
Wow. Even your balancing act is fire. I love
Thank you.
it. I love it. And it's so true, and anyone who, whether you're here or you're able to see the recording, know that it doesn't take a lot because, like I said, when I was in school and I didn't really have much support around me and, raising the children and doing everything else that I was doing, and even just being able to take some time away from taking care of the boys, because I'm a caregiver as well to two teenage boys at the same time. Just going to Latoya's house for 2 hours helped. So it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. You don't have to have a whole lot of money to go on, some celebrity type of vacation. That is nice. We're not saying that we shouldn't aspire and desire those things, but if you're not in the position to have that and to do that, it's okay, fine. Just go to a quiet library, read a book,
Whatever fills your cup.
go out and
Whatever.
yeah, just make a cup of tea. I've gone into my closet many times and sat for 5 minutes because I needed 5 minutes. And it was 5 minutes by myself away from the kids that I needed. And I took that time to do it. So whatever you're able to do to take that time for yourself as you serve and just do everything else, it's important to take care of yourself. Sister Yolanda, I'm so grateful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Aisha. And I love this platform. And, I'm here to support in everything that you do.
Oh,